Welcome back to Les Schwab Tire Center's Outdoor GPS. It's time for Owin's Field Report, sponsored by Les Schwab Tire Centers.
Now, before we get into some of the reports that I got to share for you this morning, most of which are going to be from the Columbia, yes, a couple from the coast, so if those might help, just pay attention here. If you're like me and you're about ready to hit the road and go out for our last week of bow season, good luck. I hope that everything goes well for you, myself included, please. Like everything worked like it's supposed to. Or getting ready for your upcoming rifle season, which is just a couple of weeks away from starting. We spoke with Scott Haugen yesterday about that specifically. If you're going to be making a long trip, this is what I did this week. I got the oil change done for the first time in my Chevy Silverado and went over to Les Schwab and had my tires rotated. Definitely something that you want to take care of. Go have them take a look at it at Les Schwab. Get your tires taken care of, brakes, all that stuff. Take your trailer in, get that kind of stuff all worked out ahead of time. Don't do it the day before. I did this 3 days before I was planning on leaving, which is today. Thank goodness, thank God, finally. I needed to do it a week prior because they get really busy this time of year. If you want to get everything done before you leave for your road trip, again, for that last week of a bow season or in a week or two for your upcoming rifle season, just book your time at Les Schwab now. Get in there, get that pre-road trip check done. Trust me, it'll save you some time. It would have saved me one full day. All right, so fish counts real quickly. Let's show you those. We're not going to show you the Willamette again. They haven't updated it, but based on those numbers going over the falls, you need to be thinking silvers close to home. I mentioned it yesterday. Got a little bit of flack for that. I get it, but in the end, it's opportunity. Everybody, go get them, especially the ones that are above the falls. I'm not going to get into it any more than that. I don't want to get any more trouble. So the numbers are going to stay very consistent going over the dam based on that 10-year average, like always. There's going to be that 4 to 5 grand going over Bonneville for the next couple of weeks. Now, you only have through the 30th for the retention of Chinook, but there still are plenty of silvers around. And that is, I'm not going to say 50-50, but from some of the reports yesterday, there was, 3 Chinook caught and 1 silver or a couple silvers released and a silver retained. Silver meaning coho for all you young folks out there. There's certainly some great options that are out there. And one of the questions that we got was, how do you target silvers? In particular, if you were to go out, get your Chinook right away or get that first and you want to focus and target silvers only, great idea, right? Because you have that option. It's a 2-fish limit, only one of which can be a Chinook. Now, they have to be hatchery, clipped, fin-clipped silvers, of course. But if you're going to change things up, you can, by all means, continue to troll your 360s and spinners, 360s and stuffer baits, if it's a super bait or a spin fish, and be very effective at targeting silvers. Now, you might end up going through a few Chinook, and a lot of us, we don't like doing that. If you can't keep them, I don't want to be hurting them. Pulling Brad's wigglers around, 3.5 mag lips, just pull them around behind the boat, let them dive, do their own thing. That's a very, very good way to target silvers specifically. Not that you won't catch a Chinook, but your odds are a little bit better that if you do get bit, it's going to be a silver. Again, location dependent. Let's take a look at river levels. Nothing too rocket science here. It's going to stay this way for a while. I can't wait, though, for another maybe month and a half to start see it getting up into here somehow. But with no snow on the mountains, I don't know if that's going to happen. Could be another low water year. I hope not. But remember to keep those tides in mind if you're going to go out and want to do some anchor fishing or trolling in particular. Here's the numbers coming out of Bonneville. They've been very, very consistent for folks that are spending time up in that area. Yes, typically on that rise, if you're going to be anywhere near Bonneville on a rise, the bite isn't necessarily as good. When it does turn over and start to fall, you have a little bit better window of getting bit. So keep that. If I were going to go chasing salmon this week, I would be pretty close to the area I was just talking about. ProCure, if you want to have an opportunity to win a free Pro Pack from ProCure, send Jason Hambley an email over there at jason@procure.com. And real quickly, before we go to Katie Suniga, which we will hear very, very quickly, some of the reports that we've been getting, I almost forgot about that. The Columbia itself, from the bottom to the top up to Bonneville, pretty consistent reports yesterday and already this morning. Up above, Hood River area, Drano. I'm leaving for a week, so I might not get too much flack, or at least I won't be able to see it, so I'll mention it. There's some options around there and working your way up, and it's been pretty darn good. Hover fishing, though, Talking to a couple folks that like to hover around the mouth of the chutes in particular. I don't know, we might get a report from Mark, which we've been getting those reports from him kind of weekly here from that area. Has been tough in a number of places. I'm not sure exactly why that is. And in our Chevy Silverado Tech Tip of the Week in a little bit, we're going to talk about eggs, cures in particular. Not the process, but different cures in particular. That could be part of it. We should probably get Jason on when we get back. Maybe talk a little bit about that. Although, it closes on the 30th. Anyway, so let's go ahead and check in with Katie Sneed and find out what this weather is going to do. And I see that 90 still sticking in there.
And you know what I just realized? I don't have my slides up for you.
Oh, that's okay.
So you know what we're going to do? We're just going to talk about the 7-day. How's that sound?
That'll work fine.
Okay, so here's what we have for you. Let's take a look at that 7-day forecast. We've talked about this yesterday, today, and tomorrow, all very, very similar days. We're looking at temperatures in the upper 70s to low 80s, quite a bit of sunshine, a little warmer than average, but basically just nice fall weather. We do have that one day. That's what Owin was just talking about. We still have this 90-degree day here, and that's because we have that breezy east wind that's going to be not only coming through the gorge, but it's also going to be coming down the west slopes of the Cascades. And we've talked about this before, sinking air, warm, dry, heats us up. We don't have that any of the other days, so that's why this particular day is different. We get to Wednesday and we have that trough dropping in, and that trough is what's going to bring us cooler temperatures, a cooler atmosphere, and a chance for rain in the afternoon, maybe going into the evening, temperatures back to average. A little break between systems on Thursday, back into the low 70s, and then even cooler on Friday with that next system that's coming in. That's the coolest day, obviously, on our forecast here. You can see in the upper 60s, which is well below average. Saturday, likely going to be dry that day. Of course, we're going to keep an eye on that. We'll see temperatures back into the low 70s. And then the other thing I think it's important to point out for you is that we're going to see our temperatures overnight only warm on Monday, Tuesday, going into Wednesday, and then that'll be back to average. So there you go. That's how you do a forecast when your slides aren't ready.
Hey, that's okay. That's perfect. I won't be experiencing any of that. I'll be up in the mountains at 6,000 feet.
Oh, sounds awesome. I'm
looking forward to it. Katie, thank you as always. All right, everyone, we got a phone call hanging. We got Steve from Portland. Looks like he's got a question about locations to fish without a boat, and there's a lot of them. Hopefully, we can help Steve out. Steve, what's going on?
Where do you go fishing on the Columbia? Or sometimes I go to Milton Bar, but what's the best place to go without a boat to fish for salmon and steelhead?
Well, so if you're going to fish the main stem of the Columbia, there's lots of places that you can fish on the Oregon side and the Washington side. You're a Portland resident, so I'm assuming you'd be fishing on the Oregon side. If you're going to head out, typically, you're going to be plunking, right? You're going to be casting out spinning glows, wobblers, spin fish. You can be using a kayak or a canoe, whatever, to run stuff out in the right areas, or just cast your gear out there. This time of year, it's absolutely dependent on current, meaning that you got to have a good outgoing tide because the river is very, very low. But there's a number of places down low in the lower river. You've got Sauvie Island areas, Willow Bar in particular. You've got areas further down Prescott Beach, Jones Beach. Some of those spots are very, very good for spring chinook, summer runs, and of course fall. It all depends, again, though, on current. You got to have outgoing tide, outgoing current in order to make sure that you're fishing correctly. So between those three spots, there's quite a few options there as far as how you can fish and the style that you want to do, okay? Other than that, if you work your way upriver, closer to Bonneville, there's some spots there that you can go out by the creek mouth there, and I can't think of the name of it offhand, but there's a couple of places that you can pull out there along not necessarily 84, but by the dam itself, and you can fish from the bank there, just below the deadline. So there are some options. There are options, though, that you have to explore and just get familiar with. It's easy to do. You just got to go to them, and you'll be able to see other people fishing there, and you'll find out, the best way to do it, what they're plunking with, if it's, again, spinning glows or plugs or whatever. There's any number of different ways that you can target them. But if I were to say, you living in Portland, closest to home is probably going to be that Sauvie Island-ish area. And again, you just need to go there and kind of explore it, drive through it, figure out what's going on, what the MO is, and then just pick a spot and give it a try.
Well, how far you got to cast out from the bank?
Typically not very far. In the springtime, there are times we're throwing as far out as we possibly can. This time of year, with fall Chinook in particular, water's very, very low, and a lot of the areas, there's a lot of grass that starts to grow, right? So you got to get past that. If you're in a spot where you see grass out in front of you, if you're not able to cast out that far, you're going to need to find another area where you can actually get your gear to run. Again, on an outgoing tide, when you have current, you got to make sure that you're out far enough that you're not going to be in a bunch of grass, and you're going to see most of it. If that's not possible, again, you need to move to an area that you can actually do that. You got to get your gear far enough out where it's going to be working. But typically, you know, if I'm going to refer back to, say, spring Chinook season, if the water's high, we won't cast more than 30 or 40 feet off the bank. And sometimes even closer than that, depending on what the flows are actually doing. But this time of year, with low water, very tidally influenced, you need to make sure that your gear is out there. So if you're going to be casting, again, make sure you're casting past a grass line if there happens to be one. But you just want to make sure that you're out there far enough where you know your gear is working.
Now, you're not using those spinner blades when you cast from the bank, are you?
Spinner blades? Is that
You're
what
not using the 360 spinners when you cast from the bank, are you?
No. Now, I will admit there are folks that right now are using 360s from the bank, but that's a very specialized way to plunk, and it's very location specific. So I'm not going to recommend that to anyone at all. Not that it's not a good way to go. It's just something very difficult to do. But you can cast spinners. I wouldn't recommend it. I would stick with spin and glows, size 2 or even bigger. Or you can cast a single killer fish or a Brad's Wiggler, because if it's by itself, you can cast those. Or you can cast a spin and glow out and slide a plug down, which is my preferred way to go after springers. And if I'm chasing fall Chinook in particular, this time of year, I'm going to figure out one way or the other to get a wobbler out there. And that could either be with a boat or a kayak if that's not an option for you, much like your question. You know, casting spin and glows is really your best bet.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, where's the best place to go duck hunting and pheasant hunting?
Duck hunting and pheasant hunting? In Oregon?
Well, I don't have a dog, so.
Gotcha. In Oregon, pheasant hunting, if you don't have access to private property, you're basically wasting your time. I mean, you can find them in spots on public land. Typically, they're very difficult to get to. Most of the pheasant that might be wild are going to be on private property. So not a lot of options for that here in Oregon. There are some, but it takes years of research to find those areas. As far as duck hunting goes, Oregon's got some of the worst duck hunting in the country, so I wouldn't even waste your time. I'm kidding. I'm being selfish. There's lots of areas. Your best source, ODFW's website, odfw.org. They've got lists of public land options as far as where you can chase ducks around. And again, that's just another one of those things. It's not like fishing. It's very difficult to find those spots, and it takes years to really get a good grip of where you can and can't go, what your access is or isn't in the big picture of things. So really research that website. That helps out tremendously. Steve, I got to cut away, sir. I hope that helps in some way. We'll be back in just a few minutes, everyone. We're going to start our conversation with Kyle and Miles Dotson from Or Angling. Don't go anywhere.
Outdoor GPS is brought to you by P-Line, because we fish, by Hawken Fishing, perfection in fishing gear, and by Haxton's Canvas and Upholstery, the trusted name of the Pacific Northwest.